Jake Turner checked his cargo manifest for the third time that morning. The numbers still looked wrong, but he knew they were right. 5 tons of medical supplies, 3 containers of mining equipment, and 1 very expensive bottle of wine for the station commander. It was a typical Tuesday for a freelance cargo pilot working the outer trade routes. Crossroads Hub appeared on his, a massive wheel of metal and lights spinning slowly in the darkness of space. The station served as a neutral meeting point for dozens of alien species. Humans were still the new kids here, barely 50 years into galactic society. Most aliens treated them with polite curiosity. Some treated them with suspicion. A few treated them like they smelled bad. Jake guided his ship, the Steady Hand, into docking bay 12. The landing clamps grabbed his hull with a gentle thunk. He powered down the engines and stretched in his pilot's seat. His back popped twice. He was only 32, but space travel aged you faster than planetside living. The station's artificial gravity took over as he stepped out of his ship. The bay was busy with workers loading and unloading cargo from a dozen different vessels. Jake recognized a few of the other pilots and nodded hello. They nodded back. It was a small community out here. He was halfway through offloading his cargo when the alarm started. Red lights flashed throughout the bay. A mechanical voice announced in 5 different languages that this was an evacuation drill. All personnel were to proceed to their designated safe zones. Jake had done this drill a dozen times before. It was boring but necessary. The bay started to empty. Workers headed for the exits in orderly groups. Jake finished securing his cargo containers and started walking toward the main corridor. That was when he heard it. A child crying. Jake stopped and listened. Most of the aliens on the station did not cry the same way humans did, but this sound was close enough. It came from the restricted cargo section at the far end of the bay. He looked around. Everyone else had already left. He should leave too. The drill was timed. Station security would mark him down as slow to respond, but the crying continued and it sounded scared. Jake jogged toward the restricted section. The security barrier was down, red energy crackling across the entrance. Through the transparent field, he could see a small figure huddled against a cargo container. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old by human standards. She had pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to glow faintly in the emergency lighting. Her large eyes were wide with fear. The barrier should not have been down during a drill. Someone had messed up the programming. Jake looked for a control panel. There had to be an override somewhere. Station security could open it remotely, but they were probably dealing with the drill. He pulled out his multi-tool and opened the panel cover. The wiring inside looked old. Crossroads Hub had been built by a dozen different species over 50 years. Nothing was standardized. Earth engineers had a saying, "When in doubt, find the power source and interrupt it." Jake traced the wires with his eyes and found what he was looking for. A junction box about 3 meters away, partially hidden behind a support beam. He ran to it and yanked open the cover. Inside were bundles of colored wires that meant nothing to him, but power was power and all systems needed it. He grabbed the thickest bundle and pulled. The barrier flickered and died. Jake rushed into the restricted section. The girl looked up at him with those huge eyes. She said something in her own language. He did not understand the words, but the tone was clear. She was terrified. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "I'm here to help." He held out his hand. The girl hesitated, then reached up and took it. Her fingers were cold and trembled slightly. Jake picked her up. She weighed almost nothing. Were delicate compared to humans. He had to be careful. He carried her out of the restricted section just as the drill alarm stopped. The red lights switched to normal white. The all-clear sounded. Workers started returning to the bay. And then he saw them. 3 women stood near his ship. They were tall and graceful, with the same pale blue skin and silver hair as the child. But where the girl was small and fragile, These three moved with purpose and power. They wore clothes that marked them as important. The one in the middle had military decorations on her uniform. The one on the left wore the robes of a scholar. The one on the right had the elegant dress of a diplomat. All three were staring at him. Their expressions shifted from worry to shock to something Jake could not quite identify. The child in his arms suddenly shouted something and reached toward them. The three women rushed forward. Jake carefully set the girl down and she ran to them. They knelt and embraced her, speaking rapidly in their language. The girl pointed back at Jake and said something that made all three women turn to look at him again. The one in military uniform stood and walked toward him. She stopped a respectful distance away and placed her hand over her heart in what Jake recognized as a gesture of respect. "You saved my sister," she said in perfect English. Her voice was deep and strong. "I am Sira, eldest daughter of house. These are my sisters, and the child is Lyra, our youngest." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "I just heard her crying. The barrier was down. I couldn't just leave her there." Sira's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. The station security refused to intervene. Diplomatic protocols. They said they were sending for our house guards. That would have taken 10 more minutes. 10 minutes is a long time for a scared kid, Jake said. The second sister stepped forward. She wore glasses even though could have their vision corrected with simple surgery. Jake guessed she liked how they looked. "How did you bypass the barrier? Those systems are designed to be tamper-proof." Jake shrugged. "I cut the power, basic troubleshooting." Stared at him like he had just solved an impossible equation. Basic troubleshooting. You interrupted a security grid's power supply without knowing which wires controlled what systems. "I picked the thick ones," Jake said. "Figured they were important." The third sister laughed. It was a pleasant sound like bells. "You picked the thick ones. Oh, I like him already." Sira held up a hand. "Jake Turner, yes, I saw your ship's registration. On behalf of House, we owe you a debt. Name your price." Jake blinked. "Price? No, that's okay. I'm just glad she's safe." All three sisters froze. They looked at each other and had a quick conversation in their own language. Lyra tugged on Sira's uniform and said something. Sira nodded slowly. "You refuse payment?" Sira asked carefully. "I didn't do it for money," Jake said. "Anyone would have helped her." "Station security did not help her," pointed out. "Well, they should have," Jake said. "Look, I need to finish my cargo delivery. You folks have a good day." He started to walk back to his ship. Behind him, he heard say something in. Her tone sounded amazed. Sira responded quietly, said something else. They were all talking about him. Jake focused on his work. He had 3 more stops to make before the week ended. Strange alien nobility and their customs were not his problem. He had saved a kid. That was enough. What Jake did not know, as he finished his delivery and prepared to leave the station, was that refusing reward for saving a child was the highest honor in their culture. It showed pure intent, selfless action. And what he definitely did not know was that the 3 sisters had just held a quick family council and agreed on something unprecedented. They needed to learn more about this unusual human. They needed to understand how someone could risk diplomatic incident and ask for nothing in return. As Jake's ship left Crossroads Hub and jumped into hyperspace, 3 vessels powered up their engines and followed at a discreet distance. The eldest daughter tracked his ship on her tactical display and smiled slightly. The scholar sister pulled up everything she could find about human psychology. The diplomat sister composed a message to their parents explaining what had just happened. And young Lyra sat in the command chair of their family ship, clutching a stuffed toy and asking when she could see the nice human man again. It was going to be an interesting few weeks. Jake's next stop was 5, a mining colony on the edge of the frontier zone. It took 3 days to get there through hyperspace. 3 quiet days where he caught up on his maintenance logs ate terrible freeze-dried meals, and watched old Earth movies on his. He did not think much about the sisters. They were nobles. He was a cargo pilot. Their paths had crossed for a moment, and now they would diverge forever. That was how the galaxy worked. The steady hand dropped out of hyperspace near 5. The planet below was brown and rocky, with minimal atmosphere. The mining colony existed under a massive environmental dome that kept the air breathable. It was not a pretty place, but it was honest work for honest people. Jake guided his ship toward the landing pad and requested clearance. The traffic controller, a gruff human woman named Pat, approved his approach. As he descended, he noticed 3 sleek ships already docked near the administration building. They looked expensive and fast, probably some diplomatic mission. He landed and powered down. The cargo this time was replacement parts for the mining equipment, heavy stuff. He was going to need the loading crew's help. Jake opened his cargo bay and stepped out onto the landing pad. The dome's artificial lighting made everything look flat and washed out. He could see the mining facilities in the distance, massive machines tearing into the planet's surface for rare minerals. Jake Turner. He turned. All 3 sisters stood there, Sierra in her military uniform, in practical work clothes with her glasses perched on her nose, in a flowing dress that seemed too elegant for a mining colony. Jake's mind went blank for a moment. Then he said, "What are you doing here?" "Security assessments," Sierra said smoothly. "The frontier zone has been experiencing increased pirate activity. My unit is evaluating defensive capabilities at key locations. I'm conducting research on human industrial efficiency," added. "Mining operations offer excellent data." "Cultural exchange programs," said with a smile. "I'm documenting human working conditions in harsh environments." Jake looked at each of them in turn. They all stared back with perfectly innocent expressions. He did not believe any of them. "Right," he said slowly. "Well, good luck with all that. I've got cargo to deliver." The colony's loading crew arrived and Jake directed them to the containers. The work took about an hour. The whole time he could feel the sisters watching him. Sierra stood with her arms crossed, observing everything, had pulled out and was actually taking notes, chatted with some of the miners, asking them questions about their daily lives. It was weird, but Jake had experienced weirder things in space. He finished the paperwork and headed to the colony's small cantina for lunch. The food was bad, but it was hot and filling. He was halfway through a sandwich when the alarm started. This time it was not a drill. The colony's defense systems blared warnings. The main doors sealed automatically. Through the windows, Jake could see ships descending, 5 of them, small fighters with weapons hot, pirates. The cantina erupted in chaos. Miners and workers ran for shelter. Jake stood and moved to the window. The pirate ships were circling the dome, looking for weak points. The colony's defensive turrets were offline. He could see technicians running toward the control room. "The defense grid is down for scheduled maintenance," someone shouted. "It won't be back online for another hour." An hour was too long. The pirates would breach the dome in 10 minutes. Jake's mind raced. He looked around the cantina, then out at the landing pad where his ship sat. The steady hand was not a warship. It had a tractor beam for moving cargo and basic shields. That was it. But it had something else, something the pirates would not expect. Jake ran for the door. Behind him he heard footsteps. The 3 sisters were following him. "What are you doing?" Sierra demanded. "Buying time," Jake said. He did not slow down. They reached his ship together. Jake hit the controls and the cargo bay door opened. Inside were the mining equipment containers he had delivered, heavy industrial gear. "Help me move these," Jake said. "Move them where?" asked. "Outside, around the dome's weak points." Sierra understood immediately. "You're creating barriers. The pirates will have to get through them first. It'll slow them down." The four of them worked fast. The containers were heavy, but the sisters were stronger than they looked. Might be delicate, but they were not weak. Together, they positioned the containers at strategic points around the landing area. Jake climbed back into his ship and powered up the engines. He lifted off and activated the tractor beam. He could see the pirate ships adjusting their approach. "What now?" His voice came through the comm. The sisters had put on emergency headsets. "Now we make noise," Jake said. He flew the steady hand directly at the nearest pirate ship. It veered away, surprised. Jake was not trying to ram them. He was hurting them. He used the tractor beam to grab loose mining equipment from the surface and flung it at the pirates. Rocks, metal debris, anything he could grab. It was not elegant, it was barely effective, but it was confusing. The pirates spread out, trying to flank him. Jake pushed his ship harder than he should have. The engines whined in protest. He dove low over the dome, using the structure itself as cover. On the ground, Sira had found a mining laser. It was designed to cut rock, not shoot at ships, but she aimed it at the nearest pirate anyway. The beam caught the ship's wing and burned through. The pirate spun away, trailing smoke. Had accessed the colony's communication system and was broadcasting a fake distress signal that claimed a military cruiser was en route. Jake did not know if the pirates would believe it, but it might make them hesitate. Had gathered the miners and organized them into teams. They could not fight the pirates directly, but they could reinforce the dome's weak points from inside. Jake brought the steady hand around for another pass. One of the pirate ships got a lock on him and fired. The blast hit his shields and drained them by half. Alarms screamed in his cockpit. He gritted his teeth and kept flying. Then the colony's defense grid came back online. The turrets activated with a mechanical hum and immediately targeted the pirate ships. The first volley took out 2 fighters. The others scattered and retreated into space. Within minutes, they were gone. Jake landed his ship on the pad and sat in the pilot's seat for a moment, breathing hard. His hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline. He stepped out of the ship. The 3 sisters were waiting. Sira's uniform had dirt on it. Glasses were cracked. His dress was torn. They all looked at him with expressions he still could not quite read. "That was insane," said. "That was brilliant," Sira corrected. "That was very human," added with a laugh. The colony administrator came running over, thanking them all. The miners were already talking about what had happened, exaggerating the story with each retelling. Jake just wanted to sit down. Later in the cantina, the sisters insisted on buying him dinner. The food was still terrible, but Jake ate it anyway. "You didn't have to help," he said between bites. "Neither did you," Sira pointed out. "You could have stayed in shelter." "The colony would have been destroyed," Jake said. "And that concerned you," said, studying him. "Even though these are not your people, not your responsibility." Jake shrugged. "They're people, that's enough." The 3 sisters exchanged glances, leaned forward. "Jake Turner, I have a question. On Crossroads Hub you saved our sister. Here you saved a colony. Do you make a habit of this?" "Of what?" "Helping people when it's inconvenient, when it's dangerous, when you gain nothing from it." Jake thought about it. "I guess I just do what needs doing, doesn't everyone?" Sira smiled for the first time since he had met her. It transformed her face from stern to warm. "No, Jake Turner, not everyone does." Jake finished his meal and stood to leave. He had more deliveries to make, but as he walked back to his ship he realized something. The 3 sisters were walking with him, not following, walking with him, like they belonged there. "Where's your next stop?" asked. "Epsilon Station, 2 days from here." "Interesting," said. "We were just planning to visit Epsilon Station." Jake stopped and turned to face them. "Okay, what's going on, really?" The 3 sisters looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Sira spoke. "On our world, When someone saves a member of your family and asks for nothing in return, it creates a life debt. You honored us by refusing reward. That honor demands that we learn more about you. So you're following me, Jake said. We're spending time near you, corrected gently. There's a difference. Is there? Adjusted her cracked glasses. We want to understand you, Jake Turner. You're not like other humans we've met. You're different. I'm really not, Jake said. I'm just a cargo pilot trying to make a living. Just a cargo pilot who risks himself for strangers, Sierra said. Twice now in 1 week. Jake did not know what to say to that. He looked at the three of them, these beautiful, powerful aliens who had decided he was interesting. It made him uncomfortable. He was not special. He was just him. I'm leaving in an hour, he finally said. Then we'll see you at Epsilon Station, replied. Jake walked to his ship alone, but as he powered up the engines and lifted off, he saw 3 vessels launch at the same time. They did not follow him directly. They maintained a respectful distance, but they were there. Jake sighed and set his course. This was going to be a long week. The invitation arrived 3 days later while Jake was docked at Epsilon Station. It was delivered by a courier in formal robes who bowed deeply and handed him a sealed envelope made of something that looked like silver paper but felt warm to the touch. Inside was a handwritten note in perfect English. Jake Turner, you are cordially invited to thee as a guest of house. Your presence is requested to attend a ceremony honoring your actions. Transport will be provided. Please reply at your earliest convenience. It was signed by High Commander and Lady Arya, the parents of the 4 sisters. Jake read it twice. Then he called Carlos Martinez, his old friend and fellow pilot who was also docked at the station. They met at a bar that served drinks from a dozen different worlds. Carlos ordered something blue. Jake stuck with water. So let me get this straight, Carlos said after Jake explained everything. You saved a kid. Now her 3 extremely attractive sisters won't leave you alone, and their parents want to meet you. That about sums it up, Jake said. And you're complaining about this. I'm not complaining, I'm confused. Carlos laughed. Man, you're the only person I know who would be confused by this situation. Most guys would be thrilled. They're not interested in me like that, Jake said. It's some cultural thing about honor and debt. Jake, my friend, you are incredibly dense sometimes. I've seen the way act around humans. Polite, distant. These 3 are following you across the galaxy. That's not about honor. Jake frowned. What else would it be about? Carlos just shook his head. Go to there, meet the parents, figure it out. What's the worst that could happen? The worst, Jake thought, was that he would embarrass himself in front of galactic nobility and disappoint 3 women who somehow thought he was special when he knew he was not. But he sent his reply anyway. He accepted the invitation. The transport ship arrived the next morning. It was smaller than the military vessels the sisters used, but far more luxurious than anything Jake had ever seen. The interior had actual wood paneling. Real plants grew in carefully maintained gardens. The crew treated him like he was someone important. The journey took 4 days. Jake spent most of it in his quarters, reading everything he could find about culture. He learned about their telepathic abilities, which were limited to emotional sensing and simple communication. He learned about their social structure, which valued honor and family above all else. He learned that refusing a reward for saving a family member was considered the highest form of respect because it showed the action was motivated by pure goodness. He also learned that courtship rituals were complicated and formal, and that when multiple members of a family showed interest in the same person, it was considered a situation of great importance that the entire family would be involved in resolving. Jake put down his and stared at the ceiling. No, they couldn't be interested in him like that. Carlos was wrong. This was just about honor and respect. He kept telling himself that as the ship entered orbit around. The planet was beautiful. From space, it looked like a blue pearl wrapped in silver clouds. As they descended, Jake saw cities made of crystal and metal that caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbows. Gardens and parks filled every available space. Rivers and lakes reflected the sky. Earth was by galactic standards. Heavy gravity, dangerous weather, aggressive wildlife. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most aliens. Was the opposite, gentle, peaceful, perfect. The transport landed at a private spaceport. The three sisters were waiting on the landing pad. Behind them stood two older who could only be their parents. High Commander was tall and powerful, with silver hair streaked with blue. He wore a military uniform covered in medals. His eyes were sharp and assessing. Lady Arya was elegant and serene, dressed in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer when she moved. Her expression was warm but careful. Behind them was young Lyra, bouncing excitedly. Jake walked down the ramp and stopped a respectful distance away. He had read about proper greetings. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed slightly. Studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled and returned the gesture. "Jake Turner, welcome to our home." Lady Arya stepped forward. "Our daughters have told us much about you. We are honored by your presence." "The honor is mine," Jake said, hoping he was using the right words. Lyra could not contain herself any longer. She ran forward and hugged Jake's leg. "You came. I told them you would come." Jake looked down at the little girl and felt his nervousness ease slightly. Kids were kids, no matter what planet they came from. He gently patted her head. "Hey there, good to see you again." The ceremony that evening was overwhelming. Jake was introduced to what felt like hundreds of nobles. They all wanted to meet the human who had saved little Lyra. They asked him questions about Earth, about his ship, about his life. He answered as honestly as he could. During dinner, he sat at the head table with the family. The food was strange but good. The conversation was polite but felt like a test. Asked about his background. His parents, both engineers who had taught him to fix things. His education, basic but practical. His work as a pilot, which he enjoyed because it let him see the galaxy. "You have no ambitions for advancement?" asked. "No desire for wealth or status?" Jake shrugged. "I like what I do, it's honest work, I'm good at it, that's enough." Lady Arya smiled softly, a rare answer in these halls. After dinner, requested a private conversation. Jake followed him to a balcony overlooking the city. The lights below looked like stars. "My daughters tell me you helped defend a mining colony," said without preamble, "using cargo containers and a tractor beam." "The defense grid was down," Jake said. "Someone had to do something." "But why you? Why not hide and wait for help?" Jake thought about it. "I guess I just don't like watching bad things happen when I can do something about it." Was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know that my daughters have taken an interest in you." Jake's stomach dropped. "Sir, I didn't do anything to encourage that, I just—" Held up a hand. "Peace. I am not accusing you. I am observing a fact. My three eldest daughters, each accomplished in her own field, each with her own admirers, have all independently decided that you are worth pursuing. This is unprecedented." "I don't understand why," Jake said honestly. "Don't you?" Turned to face him. "You saved my youngest child without hesitation or thought of reward. You defended strangers at great risk to yourself. You treat nobility and servants with the same respect. You are humble despite your actions. These are not common traits, Jake Turner, not among my people and not among humans either." "I'm just trying to be decent," Jake said. "Exactly," said. "You try, many people do not even try." He paused, then continued. "My daughters are free to choose their own path. If they wish to court you, I will not forbid it, but I must know your intentions. Are you here because you want to exploit this situation, or because you genuinely care?" Jake met his eyes. "I care about them. All three are amazing, but I'm a cargo pilot, They're princesses. I don't know what I could possibly offer them." "Perhaps you should ask them," said. The next day, Jake spent time with each sister individually. Sierra took him to the military training grounds and showed him combat techniques. She was impressed when he lasted 30 seconds in a sparring match. Most humans would have been overwhelmed immediately. "You move like someone who's been in real fights," she said. "Bar fights on frontier stations," Jake admitted. "Nothing fancy." "Fighting is never fancy when it's real," Sierra said. She looked at him thoughtfully. "I respect that you understand the difference." Brought him to her laboratory, where she studied human technology. She showed him a dozen projects inspired by human design principles. "Your species builds things that are simple and durable," she said. "You assume everything will break, so you make it easy to fix. It's brilliant." "It's just practical," Jake said. "Practical is brilliant," replied. She adjusted her glasses and smiled. "You don't see it, do you, how unique your perspective is?" Walked with him through the city gardens. She asked him about Earth culture, about music and art and food. She listened to his stories with genuine interest. "My sisters are right about you," she said as they sat by a fountain. "You're different from anyone we've ever met." "I'm really not," Jake said for what felt like the 100th time. Laughed. "You keep saying that, but the fact that you believe it, that you don't think you're special, that's part of what makes you special." Jake's head was spinning. That night he lay in his guest quarters and tried to process everything. 3 incredible women were interested in him. Their parents approved. He was being treated like a hero for just doing what felt right. It didn't make sense. He was nobody, just a pilot with a small ship and a simple life. But maybe that was the point. Maybe in a galaxy full of people reaching for power and status, someone who just wanted to help was actually rare. The thought kept him awake for hours. The next morning, he was summoned to meet with Lady Arya. She received him in a private garden filled with flowers that smelled like cinnamon. "My husband tested your character," she said. "Now I wish to understand your heart. Do you have feelings for my daughters?" Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally he said, "I like them, all of them. They're smart and strong and kind. But I'm terrified of hurting them. If I choose wrong, if I disappoint them, I don't think I could forgive myself." Lady Arya's expression softened. "Jake Turner, let me tell you something. My daughters are not fragile flowers. They are warriors and scholars and diplomats. They can handle disappointment. What they cannot handle is dishonesty. Be truthful with them. Be yourself. That's all anyone can ask. And if myself isn't good enough, then they will tell you," Lady Arya said simply. "But I don't think that will happen." That evening, Jake asked to speak with all 3 sisters together. They met in a quiet room overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. "I need to be honest with you," Jake said. "I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been in a situation like this. You're all incredible and I care about all of you, but I'm just me. I fix things and deliver cargo. I'm not noble or important. I don't have anything special to offer." Sierra spoke first. "You have courage." Added, "You have creativity." Finished, "You have kindness." "Those aren't special," Jake said. "They are to us," Sierra replied. The challenge came 3 days later. Jake was having breakfast with the family when an official arrived. He wore the formal robes of the High Council and carried a sealed document. His face was stern. "House," he announced, "a formal challenge has been issued regarding the human Jake Turner. House questions his intentions and character. They demand a trial of truth." The room went silent. The expression hardened. Lady Arya's hand tightened around her cup. The 3 sisters looked at each other with worry. Only Jake was confused. "What's a trial of truth?" Explained quietly. "It's an ancient tradition. When someone's honor is questioned, they can be forced to undergo 3 tests that reveal their true nature. The tests are designed to expose lies and hidden motives." "House is a rival family," Sierra added, her voice angry. "They've been trying to diminish our influence for years. They see you as a weakness they can exploit. They claim you're manipulating us for political gain," said, "that you're using our affection to advance yourself." Jake looked around the table. "Can I refuse the challenge?" Shook his head. Refusing would be seen as admission of guilt. Your honor would be destroyed and by extension ours. "Then I'll do it," Jake said simply. Lady Arya reached across the table and touched his hand. "Jake, these tests are difficult. They're designed to break people, to force them to reveal their worst selves." "Then I guess they'll see what my worst self looks like," Jake said. He smiled slightly. "How bad can it be?" The trial was held 3 days later in the Hall of Truth, an ancient building at the center of the city. Hundreds of gathered to watch. House sat on one side, their leader a cold-eyed man named. House sat on the other side. Jake stood in the center, alone. The first test was called the Maze of Desires. They led Jake into a massive room filled with mirrors and holographic projections. The officials explained that the maze would show him illusions based on his deepest wants and fears. How he reacted to these illusions would reveal his true character. The door sealed behind him. The room shifted and changed. Jake found himself standing in a palace. Servants bowed as he passed. He wore expensive clothes and carried himself like someone important. In the illusion, he was a prince, powerful, wealthy, respected. Then the scene changed. He saw himself commanding fleets of ships, making decisions that affected billions. People feared him, admired him, obeyed him. Jake watched it all with a strange detachment. Was this supposed to tempt him? The idea of power and status. The illusion shifted again. Now he was back on Earth, but everything was different. His parents' small house had been replaced with a mansion. His old cargo ship had become a luxury yacht. He had everything money could buy. Jake walked through the illusion, examining it. After a while, he sat down on the floor and waited. The illusion flickered and failed. The room returned to normal. The officials looked confused. "Why did you not engage with the visions?" one of them asked. "Because none of that is what I want," Jake said. "I just want to have dinner with my friends and family. I want to do work that matters. I want to help people when I can. You can't show me those things because they're too simple." In the observation room frowned. Sierra smiled. The second test was called the Crucible of Endurance. They took Jake to a training ground outside the city. The test was simple in concept but brutal in execution. He had to complete an obstacle course designed for military candidates. Running, climbing, swimming, fighting. The course usually took 6 hours. Most candidates failed. The officials clearly expected Jake to struggle. Humans were tough, but this was a test designed for capabilities. What they didn't account for was that Earth gravity was stronger than Earth's weather was harsher. Earth's environment was more hostile. Jake had grown up in conditions that would hospitalize most. He started the course at dawn. The first section was a 5-kilometer run through rough terrain. Jake's legs burned, but he kept moving. The gravity felt light to him. He could jump higher, move faster. The second section was climbing. Sheer walls with minimal handholds. Jake's hands were bleeding within the first hour, but he didn't stop. On Earth, he'd worked construction jobs that were harder than this. The third section was swimming across a cold lake. The water was freezing by standards. To Jake, it felt like a cool bath. By midday, he was still going. The officials watching were stunned. Candidates usually needed multiple rest breaks. Jake had taken one for 10 minutes to drink water. The fourth section was a series of puzzles and tactical challenges. Jake solved them methodically, using logic and patience. He wasn't trying to be clever. He was just working through the problem step by step. The final section was combat. He had to face 3 soldiers in hand-to-hand fighting. They were skilled and trained, but they were also used to fighting others who were graceful and precise. Jake fought like a human, Messy, aggressive, relentless. He took hits that would have stopped them and kept coming. He didn't try to match their technique. He overwhelmed them with sheer stubborn determination. He finished the course as the sun was setting. 12 hours, twice as long as a good time, but he had finished. More importantly, he had finished without giving up once. Jake collapsed at the finish line, breathing hard. His body was covered in bruises and cuts. Everything hurt, but he was grinning. Sierra was the first to reach him. She knelt beside him and offered water. That was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Thanks, Jake said between gasps. I think. Arrived with medical supplies. You should have quit hours ago. Your body is at its limit. Humans don't quit easy, Jake said. It's kind of our thing. Just looked at him with tears in her eyes. You didn't have to prove anything. We already believe in you. I know, Jake said, but they don't, and I don't quit. Watch from a distance, his expression unreadable. His challenge was failing. The human had shown no desire for power and endurance that reason. Only one test remained. The third test was called the Mirror of Truth. It took place in a chamber beneath the Hall of Truth. Jake had been given a day to recover from the physical trial. He still ached, but medical technology had healed the worst of his injuries. The chamber was round and empty except for a chair in the center. The walls glowed with soft light. Telepaths stood in a circle around the room. The officials explained that Jake would be asked questions while the telepaths read his emotional state. Lies would be impossible to hide. Half-truths would be revealed. Only complete honesty would be accepted. Jake sat in the chair. He looked around at the telepaths and the assembled crowd watching from the galleries above. Then he looked at the three sisters sitting with their parents. They all looked worried. He gave them a small nod. It would be okay. The questioning began. Why did you save Lyra? She was scared and trapped. I couldn't leave her there. The telepaths confirmed truth. What did you hope to gain from helping House? Nothing, I just wanted to help. Truth. Do you have feelings for Sierra and... Jake took a breath. Yes, I care about all three of them. They're amazing and I enjoy every moment I spend with them. Truth. Do you seek to use these feelings for political advantage? No, I don't want political power. I don't even understand it. I just want to know them better. Truth. Stood from his seat. Then explain this, human. If you have no ambitions, no desires for advancement, why are you here? Why did you accept this trial? What do you truly want? Jake looked up at him. I'm here because the sisters deserve someone who will defend their honor. I accepted this trial because refusing would hurt them. What I want is for them to be happy, even if that means they realize I'm not good enough for them. The chamber went completely silent, even had no response. The head telepath, an elderly woman, stepped forward. In 50 years of service, I have never encountered a mind so clear and honest. This human speaks only truth. His thoughts match his words perfectly. There is no deception in him. The trial was over, had no choice but to withdraw his challenge. Jake's honor was intact. But more than that, everyone present had witnessed something rare. A person who genuinely meant what they said, who wanted nothing for himself except the happiness of others. After the trial, Jake was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. He had laid his feelings bare in front of hundreds of strangers. The three sisters found him in a quiet garden, sitting by a fountain. Sierra sat on his right. You didn't have to do that. Sat on his left. You could have refused the trial and returned to your ship. Sat in front of him. Why did you stay? Jake looked at each of them. Because you're worth fighting for, all three of you. I don't know if I'm what you need, but I know you deserve someone who won't run when things get hard. Sierra reached out and took his hand. We didn't doubt you. Took his other hand. We never doubted you. Smiled through tears. We just wanted you to know yourself as we know you. Jake felt something break open in his chest. All the walls he'd built around himself, all the beliefs that he wasn't special or important, cracked and fell away. Maybe he was just a cargo pilot. Maybe he wasn't noble or powerful or rich, but he was brave and kind and honest, and maybe that was enough. "So what happens now?" he asked quietly. The three sisters looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them, then spoke. "Now we figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations, just us getting to know each other honestly." "Can we do that?" Jake asked. "Even with all the cultural stuff and the politics and everything?" "We can try," Sierra said firmly. "And if it doesn't work?" Jake asked. "Then we'll still be friends," said, "but I don't think it will come to that." Jake sat in the garden with the three sisters, holding their hands, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he felt at peace. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. And that was more than he ever expected to find when he saved a little girl from behind a security barrier. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness created the biggest changes. Jake was starting to believe that now. 3 months had passed since the trial, and Jake's life had changed in ways he never imagined. He still ran his cargo routes. The steady hand still hauled supplies and equipment across the frontier, but now he wasn't alone. Sometimes Sierra joined him, riding along on dangerous routes and helping defend merchant convoys from pirates. Sometimes came aboard to study his ship's systems and suggest improvements. Sometimes traveled with him to document human trade practices and write about cultural exchange. Sometimes all three came along, and those were Jake's favorite trips. The ship felt alive with their presence. Sierra would tell stories from her military service, would get excited about some scientific discovery and explain it in terms Jake could understand, would play music from her and teach him songs. Young Lyra had also become a regular presence in Jake's life. She visited whenever he stopped at the, asking endless questions about Earth and humans and space travel. She had started learning English and insisted on practicing with Jake, even when her pronunciation made the words unrecognizable. It was a strange new normal, but it was good. Jake was making a routine delivery to a refueling station near the border zone when the alert came through. A distress signal. A merchant vessel under attack by the Syndicate, one of the largest pirate organizations in the sector. Jake checked the coordinates. He was close, 40 minutes away at best speed. He could help. He was about to change course when he heard footsteps behind him. All three sisters emerged from the crew quarters. They'd been traveling with him this week, taking what had called a vacation from royal duties. "We heard the alert," Sierra said. She was already checking her weapons. "I'm going to help," Jake said. "You three should stay here where it's safe." Raised an eyebrow. "Jake, we've been through this. We're a team now." "Besides," added, "you'll need our help. Don't take prisoners." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew they were right, and honestly, he trusted them as much as he trusted himself. "Okay," he said, "but we do this smart. Sierra, I need you on weapons. Can you handle communications and electronic warfare, coordinate with the other nearby ships and get them to converge on our position?" The three sisters moved to their stations without question. They had done this before. They worked together like a trained crew now, anticipating each other's needs. The steady hand jumped to high speed. Jake pushed the engines harder than usual. They had people to save. They arrived to find the merchant ship venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. 5 fighters circled it like sharks. The merchant vessel was a bulk hauler, unarmed and helpless. 3 escape pods launched, reported. The rest of the crew is still aboard, hull integrity failing. Jake didn't hesitate. He flew straight at the formation. They scattered, surprised by his aggressive approach. The steady hand wasn't a warship, but Jake flew it like one. Sierra opened fire with their forward weapons. She was a trained military officer. Her shots didn't miss. The first fighter took a direct hit and went spinning away. hacked into the communication network and played false orders over their command channel. Two of the fighters broke off to respond to a fake emergency. That left three. Had contacted every ship within range. 4 other merchant vessels changed course to help. It would take them time to arrive, but just knowing backup was coming changed the dynamic of the fight. Jake used the tractor beam to grab debris from the damaged merchant ship and flung it at the fighters. It was the same tactic he'd used at the mining colony, crude but effective. One of the fighters managed to get behind them and fired. The shot hit their rear shields. Alarms blared. "Shields at 30%, reported calmly. "Rerouting power from life support," Sierra said. "We have 10 minutes of air." Jake nodded. 10 minutes was enough. He dove toward the merchant ship and came up underneath it, using the bulk hauler as cover. The fighters followed. That was a mistake. The merchant ship's captain, realizing what Jake was doing, vented his remaining fuel tanks. The cloud of gas filled the space between the two vessels. Jake fired a single shot into the cloud. It ignited. The explosion was massive. 2 fighters were caught in the blast and destroyed. The third was damaged and retreated. "Now the hard part," Jake said. "We need to evacuate the remaining crew." "The hull is collapsing," said. "They have maybe 5 minutes." "Then we have 5 minutes," Jake replied. He brought the steady hand alongside the dying merchant ship. Sierra and put on emergency suits and went out through the airlock. They moved along the hull of the merchant vessel, using magnetic boots, and cut through the damaged sections. Inside, they found 12 crew members trapped in a sealed compartment. The corridor leading out had been breached. They couldn't reach the escape pods. Sierra guided them out through the hull breach and across the gap to the steady hand. It was slow, dangerous work. The merchant ship groaned and twisted as its structure failed. Jake watched the clock. 3 minutes left, then 2, then 1. The last crew member made it across with seconds to spare. Sierra hauled them into the airlock just as the merchant ship broke apart. Metal screamed. Atmosphere rushed into space. The bulk hauler split into 3 pieces that drifted away in different directions. Jake backed the steady hand away and took a long breath. They'd made it. Everyone was safe. The rescued crew filled their small ship. 12 people plus Jake and the 3 sisters. It was crowded and uncomfortable, but they were alive. The captain of the merchant ship, a gruff woman named Helen, gripped Jake's hand. "You saved our lives, all of us. How can we repay you?" "Just pass it on," Jake said. "Help someone else when you get the chance." Helen stared at him for a moment, then laughed. "You're serious. You really don't want anything." "I'm serious," Jake confirmed. After they delivered the survivors to the nearest station, Jake and the sisters sat in the ship's small common area. They were exhausted but satisfied. "That was close," said. "Too close," Sierra agreed. She looked at Jake. "You took a big risk coming to help." "So did you," Jake pointed out. "All 3 of you, you could have stayed safe." "We could have," said, "but we didn't, because that's not who we are anymore." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. The 3 sisters exchanged glances. Then Sierra spoke. "Before we met you, we were separate. I was the soldier, was the scholar, was the diplomat. We loved each other, but we didn't really work together. We each had our own path. You changed that," continued. "You showed us that strength comes from cooperation, that it's okay to be vulnerable and ask for help, that the best solutions come from different perspectives. We're better together," finished, "all of us, including you." Jake felt his throat tighten. "I didn't do anything special. I just treat people like people." "Exactly," Sierra said softly. "And somehow, that's the most revolutionary thing in the galaxy." A week later, they were back on the. Jake had been invited to a formal dinner with the family. He wore his best clothes, which still weren't very fancy, but Lady Arya had assured him that sincerity mattered more than style. During the meal, made an announcement. The High Council has decided to honor Jake Turner with the title of Friend to House. This is rarely given to outsiders. It means you are considered family in all but blood. Jake didn't know what to say. He looked at the three sisters. They were all smiling. "There's more," Lady Arya said. "The sisters have made a request and we have agreed. Jake, they wish to formalize their courtship with you, all three of them." Jake's mind went blank. All three, is that allowed? "In culture, yes," said. "It's uncommon but not forbidden. The choice is yours. You may accept, decline, or take time to consider." Jake looked at each sister in turn. Sierra, strong and brave, brilliant and curious, kind and diplomatic. He cared about all of them, but was he ready for this? "Can I ask a question first?" Jake said. "Of course," Lady Arya replied. "What happens if it doesn't work? What if we realize we're better as friends? What if I disappoint you?" Reached across the table and took his hand. "Then we'll still be friends. Nothing changes that, but we'll never know unless we try." "We're not asking for a lifelong commitment today," Sierra added. "We're asking if you're willing to explore this with us, to see where it goes." Together finished. Jake sat back and thought, this was crazy. Him, a cargo pilot in a relationship with three princesses, it made no sense. But then again, nothing about this whole situation had made sense from the beginning. He'd just done what felt right, step by step, and somehow ended up here. Maybe that was the answer. Don't overthink it, just keep doing what feels right. "Okay," Jake said, "let's try." The sisters' faces lit up. Young Lyra, who had been sitting quietly, let out a cheer, even smiled. "Then it's settled," Lady Arya said, "though I suspect this is just the beginning of a much larger adventure." She was right. Over the next few months, Jake learned what it meant to be in a relationship with three people. It was complicated. There were misunderstandings and awkward moments, times when he didn't know how to balance everyone's needs, times when he felt inadequate and overwhelmed. But there were also moments of perfect harmony, like when they all sat together watching the sunset or when Sierra taught him combat moves and they ended up laughing on the training mat, or when explained some scientific concept and he actually understood it, or when played music and they all sang together, even though Jake couldn't carry a tune. They became partners in every sense. Sierra joined him on dangerous cargo runs, and they developed a reputation as the team you called when things got rough. Helped him upgrade the steady hand with technology, making it faster and more efficient. Traveled with him to document human-alien cooperation, and her reports changed how many species viewed Earth. Young Lyra visited often, and Jake became something like an older brother to her. He taught her about Earth culture and told her stories about humanity's journey to the stars. She taught him history and how to sense emotions telepathically, though he was terrible at it. Word spread through the galaxy about the human pilot and the three princesses. Some people found it romantic. Some found it scandalous. Most found it confusing. Jake didn't care. He was happy. One evening, almost a year after he'd first saved Lyra, Jake sat on the observation deck of his ship with all three sisters. They were traveling back to Earth so they could meet his parents. He was nervous about that. His mom and dad were simple people. He worried they'd be overwhelmed. "Stop worrying," Sierra said without looking at him. She'd gotten good at reading his moods. "I'm not worrying," Jake lied. "You absolutely are," said, adjusting her glasses. "Your breathing pattern changes when you're anxious." "We'll love your parents because they raised you," added. "That's all that matters." Jake smiled. "How did I get so lucky?" "Luck had nothing to do with it," Sierra said. "You saved a child. You did the right thing. Everything else followed from that." "All I did was save an alien girl," Jake said. "And now that girl's three sisters won't let you go," teased. "Is that a problem?" asked with mock seriousness. Jake looked at the three of them. These amazing women who had chosen him for reasons he still didn't fully understand, who had changed his life in every way possible, who made every day an adventure. "Not even a little bit," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars stream past. Somewhere ahead was Earth. Behind them was, around them was the vast galaxy full of possibilities. Jake Turner had spent his life thinking he was ordinary, just a cargo pilot trying to get by. But the truth was more complex. Ordinary people could do extraordinary things simply by caring, by helping when help was needed, by treating others with kindness and respect. He wasn't special because of some grand destiny. He was special because he chose to be decent in a universe that often forgot the value of simple goodness. And somehow that was enough, more than enough, it was everything. As Earth grew larger in Jake felt's hand slip into his. Then Sierra's. They sat together, connected, as the planet that had made Jake who he was came into view. "Ready?" Sierra asked. "Ready," Jake confirmed. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and that made all the difference.